Hey, Zach.
Hey Phil, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Did you have any issues with the link? There's like an old Zoom link, and then I found this link.
Yeah, I remember Tiffany Brown saying at the last commission meeting that LFUCG is moving towards Microsoft. So
Okay.
Melissa sent out a bunch of emails, one canceling the Zoom link meetings and one reestablishing them or updating them as a Microsoft Teams. So yeah, I had to
Okay.
look through stuff too, but I found it.
Yeah. Well, seeing you here, hopefully.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
And there's
Kennedy. Hey,
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
Good afternoon, guys.
Good
How are you,
afternoon.
sir?
Doing well.
Good.
So I know Serenity had emailed me and said specifically she's not going to be able to make it. So we're not expecting her. I have not heard either way from Wit, and there's also um, one or two other people on here. Like Christian shows up on this list, but I don't know if he's on this committee or not. Question mark.
I think I think because he hasn't been to a formal commission meeting, I don't know if
Yeah,
he's officially on this. I know Christian was on it before, so
gotcha.
was Whitaker, and I think and Melissa may know. I think that Atiba, did she
Yeah,
join this one? Yeah.
her name's at least on it. I don't think she's been on any of the meetings. Wit has
Yeah.
since I've been here. So um, I don't know what. Give it 2 minutes and then we'll just go, or whoever
Um,
jumps on.
yeah, because I think with the three of us here, it's a quorum.
Okay. Okay. Good deal. We'll give it a sec and see if Wit or any of these other people end up jumping on, and we'll get going.
I was glad to hear that when you all went to the presentation again, that Commissioner Wells said that there was a lot of good new updates and stuff like that. That was good to hear at the last commission meeting.
Yes, it was. I think it's definitely something I'm going to circle to make as an annual visit, and not to get into the word recommendations, but I would encourage, those that are on this subcommittee to, even though it's repetitive, I mean, WIT, of course, I think has a record for visits to
Yeah.
the Intelligence Center, but I do think it, falls into the line of due diligence when it comes to like an annual visit with them.
Mhm.
Number one, just so they can engage with us and vice versa.
Well, and we can just go ahead and get going. Yeah, it was a great visit. I was really glad to do it. It was eye-opening for me, certainly, because that was my first time there. I think it was maybe even my first time at the RTIC in any capacity. But I don't think, are we not allowed to discuss recommendations? I think we are. I think this is where they come out of, right? Or these subcommittees.
Yes. Yes. Yes, you can.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Tiffany. I think from looking over y'all's last set of recommendations, I don't know that there was anything explicit about flock. And so maybe, one thing you'd mentioned, Kennedy, was some sort of either notice or just update or something. And certainly I'm all for us going over every year, but I think you'd also, if I heard you right, expressed an interest in like making sure anytime there's a major change that they kind of let the committee, the commission know. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think it falls into that very large bucket of information gathering, and a lot of times we seem to be on the reactive side of information gathering rather than the proactive side. And I think just in terms of this body, in terms of the Racial Justice and Equity Commission as a whole, but most definitely when you drill down to this subcommittee, I think the relationship should evolve to a point, the interaction should evolve to a point where there's almost a feeling that of being compelled to engage this group in conversation. Once again, I don't necessarily want to, get out of our lane in terms of what the role of the commission is and the role of this subcommittee. But I think that probably ultimately takes us to the optimum in terms of what this body should be about, is to be more on the proactive side rather than always sort of reacting. Case in point, different committee, different subcommittee, but we've talked about arts, Lex Arts, and their situation. Maybe if they would have engaged or got some consultation from a group like this when it comes to addressing certain things, then maybe we could have been, and we could have provided an assist to them in terms of helping navigate some of the potential landmines that may or blind spots that may exist in terms of interacting and in deploying certain programs and implementing additional flock cameras, et cetera. Be on the proactive side rather than the reactive side.
Phil, any thoughts on that?
I mean, if that's something that we can make a recommendation about, saying that, if PD wants to, as they're mapping things out, if they'd like to get our feedback on things like where the new cameras are going to be placed, if they're going to implement something new, to at least engage us. So, because the thing is that we could also help make the recommendation that's needed for them to possibly do bigger and better things. because they would have engaged us, had a conversation with us, and we can talk through how it would still be very equitable and just and everything to implement certain things. So just to get like outside feedback, I mean, I'm sure they get plenty of that through the city and through other people that they engage, but just to have like another voice, if that's something that we can recommend, I think we have to ask Director Brown about that, if that's something that is doable as a recommendation.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I believe it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the question would be whether, like you said, whether it would be, you know, a recommendation that they come to us before they place the flocks, and that we're in the, which I think would actually be my preference too.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you know, one thing we've talked about is it's not just about us having input on that end, but it's also by understanding the process, being able to better communicate that process when that's brought up as a concern by citizens. It would also be helpful to say, look, we did have input into the process, and here's what we understand. And you know, it seems like from that meeting Kennedy and I had, they are doing a great job of communicating this out and taking input from the community. But in as much as that's also part of our role too, I think it would be useful to be in on that on the front end. So our actual formal recommendations are what, due in October? Is that right?
I think based on last year's timeline, yeah, we need to start writing it ahead of time, and we need to have it to Tiffany or to Director Brown a month or two ahead of time, so she can look at all of the different subcommittees, coalesce them into one report that, you know, sounds like it was, you know, kind of sort of written by the same person, and so it sounds like it's one report instead of 5 separate reports.
But prior to that, Field, the recommendations will go before the full commission first.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
So that's why we have them in October.
Okay, so in other words, you mean and sorry, I'm new to this, but Tiffany, you mean that the subcommittee recommendations are due out in October, and then they're voted on by the committee by the end of the calendar year?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So in other words, you know, if our next meeting is October 3rd for the subcommittee, would we have to have something to them prior to our next subcommittee meeting?
No, it can be after the next subcommittee meeting.
Oh, good. Okay.
Or if you need to, if this committee needs to change its schedule, then that is an option as well.
Okay. I mean, you know, if we're able to do it after October 3rd, since that's the beginning, I wouldn't mind formalizing it. Hopefully Serenity will be able to make the next one. Anyone else can do it then. But certainly, I think this general idea of a recommendation that, you know, the Lexington Police Department, what would be the best way to put this? Lexington PD consult with LEGA prior to any significant changes. I don't know. That's a lawyerly word that then could be interpreted. You know, on the one hand, I don't think we would want to be told every single time there is, like, if they move the position of one flock camera, I don't know that we'd want to be looped in on that. On the other hand, I don't want it to be like, oh, they only have to do it if they're entirely overhauling the entire system prior to any. Do you guys think significant changes?
I think we can put that down in terms of it being kind of like the draft recommendation, and then we can nuance it as we move forward. I just believe that, you know, it's important that not only the Lexington Police Department, but any other relevant entity as it relates to this committee see the LEGA subcommittee as a go-to, and it's part of their sort of protocol. Like it's on a list somewhere of, hey, did anybody engage with, you know, LEGA around this particular subject matter? And to me, that's the optimum in terms of not only the subcommittee role, but then the larger commission role. is to be on the list of people that, of groups that are engaged proactively, as opposed to us finding out after the fact and then having to react to it.
Yeah. Well, that would be one good recommendation that would, I think, help, like you said, be proactive. The other things I had on my list that we talked about last time were maybe a meeting or discussion or maybe invitation to folks in the community relations or community engagement unit. I think that was discussed last time. I don't know if that's still something people have interest in.
I do.
Yes.
Okay. Would you guys prefer to just invite them to the next meeting, or do you guys want to do a standalone? I mean, we could either, I think Tiffany was saying like, not exactly like a very conducive space for a meeting where they are, if I'm remembering what she was saying, right? But we could either do a special meeting and invite them to a Zoom, try to meet them in person. Tiffany, I don't know if you have any thoughts logistically, what would make the most sense?
Just to clarify, are we talking about the Lexington Police Department or One Lexington?
Well, I think my impression was we were talking about the police community relations unit, but it could be One Lexington. I'm not sure. I'd be open to both, whatever you guys want.
No, you just referenced the meeting space, and I know when that
Oh, we were
subject
talking
came
about
up,
one.
we were talking about One Lexington because apparently
Mhm.
they live in the cube world with Tiffany or Director Brown.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've actually discussed both.
Okay.
So I think just kind of as far as scheduling goes, let me know what would be the preference in that, in that meeting. Now, if it's going to be the full, um, if there's going to be a quorum of members from the subcommittee, then it would need to be a special meeting. If not, if it's more of a one-on-one, or not one-on-one, but one person or two people from this committee meeting with Director Karama or the community engagement liaison at the Lexington Police Department, then we would need to schedule a special meeting. So, or we would not need to schedule a special meeting if there's only two. But I believe the bylaws state that that these subcommittees are three or more. 3 to 7 would be the amount of folks that can be on a subcommittee. So I think just let me know whatever your preference is. What would probably be easier is to schedule a special meeting for both of them, just in case. Just in case, and we can do that on Zoom. I think that would probably be the most beneficial thing, because also the public could show up, and individuals from the full commission.
I agree with Director Brown. I think that if we do a special committee or special meeting, we can schedule it for before the October 2nd full commission meeting. We can dedicate a certain amount of time to talking to One Lexington and Director Karama and that team, and then use the last bit of time, like the last 15 minutes or so, to possibly talk about and get our recommendations ready. So since our next full subcommittee meeting is the day after the full commission meeting, if we can get all of our recommendations done between ourselves before that October 2nd meeting, we can at least present all of our recommendations, get the feedback, and then the next day when we have our subcommittee meeting, we can finesse everything with the feedback we're given and give everything to Director Brown right away after that, instead of having to wait for another cycle and stuff like that. I just want to make sure, because last year we got our report done very late, and I want to make sure that we don't give Director Brown reason to have to say, well, we're getting it done, we're working on it. So maybe schedule a special meeting to talk to Director Karama.
Sure. That all makes sense to me. And, you know, we've got 2 months between now and our next actual scheduled subcommittee. So it seems to me that maybe August and September would make sense for one meeting with Director Karama and then one meeting with the community liaison from Lexington PD. Obviously, we'll need to know what works for their availability, but we're far enough out where it might make sense to go ahead and pick a day or two in August. Do you guys have any big conflicts or strong preferences in August?
For me, the first week of August, the first full week of August, and the last week of August, I'll be out.
You'll be out. Okay. So then that gives us, if we stick with meetings on Thursdays, that leaves us the 15th and 22nd for one meeting, one special meeting that we can maybe talk about and schedule now, because that's what we did in the Racial Equity Subcommittee. We planned one out, had the meeting, and then at the end of that meeting, we planned the second one for September or the next month for the next meeting.
Gotcha. If it's okay with you all, I might advocate for something a little earlier in the week because I have a trial that's supposed to start towards the end of I think it's supposed to start the 15th or 16th.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the next week is also going to be that trial. So if we could try, are you guys available on Monday, the 12th of August?
I'm flexible on the 12th. Yes.
Same for me.
Tiffany, would that work okay for you?
That works for me.
Okay. So whatever time ends up being good for, do you guys want to do Director Karama first, or do you want to do the community relations person or multiple people?
My preference is community relations.
Okay.
I think that what we did with our racial equity subcommittee, we gave Director Brown our first choice and second choice, and then they went out and she went out and said, "Here's the date. Can you make it?" And then whoever can make it makes it. So we can say that the Lexington PD liaison is our first choice, and then Director Crum is our second choice. So, and then once she locks someone in, she'll email everyone a meeting invite for it, and it'll say what who's coming.
Perfect. That sounds great to me. I think I can be a little flexible, but again, my preference, if we can do it, would be like these meetings for it to start at 4, because usually when it's in the middle of the day, that sometimes causes issues. I could make it work, obviously, this far out.
4 p.m. works for me.
That
4
works.
p.m. works for me.
Okay, good
Cool.
deal.
So
all right, so
we'll set it for Monday, August 12th at 4 p.m.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then I like Phil's idea that whenever we're done with that discussion, we can figure out when we want the September date to be. It'll obviously be whoever's left. And we can also, depending on who shows up in August, maybe do a little more discussion about this flock recommendation and do the same in September so that it's in good shape before October 2nd.
So just to implement some things that we did for racial equity, I think that we should think about what questions we would like them to address and give them, unfortunately, we didn't do this for the racial equity first meeting, so we couldn't instigate it for the future meetings, but maybe let them know that if you'd like to do a presentation, you have 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will do about 20 to 25 minutes of Q&A, depending on whether it's with people that are attending the meeting outside the subcommittee. And then that way we do the last 15 minutes for us to wrap up and talk about recommendations and then set the next meeting. Does that sound okay to everyone?
Yeah, that seems sensible to me.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good structure to it.
So I guess what we need to figure out is what would we like to hear from the Lexington PD liaison, and what would we like to hear from One Lexington? That way, Director Brown and Melissa are able to go out and say, who can make it? Great, you can make it. Here are the questions, and here's the format.
So, I mean, this is not groundbreaking by any means, along with most of the things I say, but the thing that would be most interesting to me is for either of them, what do you view as the biggest challenge in your job in terms of viewing things through the prism of racial equity and justice? What is the biggest issue you're confronting? And are you aware of any recommendation or solution we could do to help that? I think the other question that comes to mind for me is, in your interactions with the community, what are you hearing as, and these may be the same thing, but what are you hearing as the biggest concerns that the members you're talking with are experiencing when it comes to this topic?
Those sound good to me. Kenny, do you have anything specific that you'd like to hear from either One Lexington or the community liaison from Lex PD?
Community liaison, definitely, there's a theme in terms of reactive versus proactive. For instance, does the community liaison have like an annual calendar that they, and I don't necessarily know if we have to get into weeds and say that specifically, but more just along the theme of reactive versus proactive in terms of engaging the community in policing matters.
Okay,
And what is their specific role with that?
cool.
Yeah.
I like those three questions.
Mm-hmm. Phil, what would you like to hear?
I mean, I think those three are good starter questions for their presentation. And then we can ask questions or field questions from the public, whoever shows up, if they have anything. I don't want to bog them down with too much from us as an opener. I'd rather just give them some time to present, and that way we can do some more detailed in the weeds questionings on the day of the presentation. So, and then Kenny, do you have something specific for Director Karama that you'd like to hear from them outside of the two that Zach mentioned?
I don't. I think more for me is information gathering. It definitely falls into the bucket of information gathering from Divine Karama. Just what they sort of, maybe an update as far as like his 5-year strategic plan. I know we were given that last year. Just
Okay.
maybe kind of where things are with that.
Okay, cool. Great. I think we have the three questions for both.
Yeah.
I think we're good, and we have a date for the first one. So, Director Brown, do you need anything else from us as far as like making the asks to both One Lexington and Lex PD?
If you wouldn't mind, because I'm coming from one meeting to another and on this call, to send me these questions by email so I can include them in my invitation to the two entities.
Cool.
Sure. And Kennedy, I know you were talking about proactive and reactive and, the issue of the annual calendar, but in one sentence, what would be the best way to summarize the question so that I've got obviously the ones I wrote down, but I want to make sure I do it justice when I send Director Brown that email.
I may have to think about it to get it down to one sentence or one question.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Why don't you could follow up
think
separately.
I think I'm within bounds to send that via email to you.
Sounds good.
Cool.
The only other thing I was going to ask is, the flock thing is a very discreet and understandable recommendation. Obviously, I'm hopeful that these other meetings will lead to possibly other recommendations we can consider, but I was just curious at this point if there were any other recommendations you guys had kicking around that you thought we should consider. I don't recall anything explicit. I think most of the stuff from the first meeting, which was very good, was more like who we should talk to and what we should do and what we should focus on, which was all very useful. But I wanted to see if you guys had any other things that you were kicking around in terms of recommendations we should consider or start shaping. And it can still be just the beginning of an idea. It doesn't have to be, the actual text. I at this point don't, but I'm also very new to this field, whereas you guys have been on the committee for a while.
I think in general, in the past, we've always wanted to make sure that there, like to Kennedy's point, that there is some sort of schedule where Lexington PD does hold, I guess, informational sessions and meetings about various things to help build trust in the community. I think that was the one big thing that we wanted to. I think we did provide that recommendation last year, but we didn't have any data to help support the need of that. So I think that's why these two meetings with one Lexington and Lexington PD, that will give us some more meat and data behind it. So I would like to still make the recommendation that Lexington PD set a schedule and maybe put together like an agenda and think about not just holding their own, but maybe going out to a community, like a trusted community area. Like I think last year I had suggested that maybe we host an informational meeting over at the Lyric Theater, because that is a trusted space, it's a safe space, and we can go in there so all of the people in the community feel comfortable to come in and ask questions, or maybe, engage some of the churches in the area. Can we come in and do a meeting with Lexington PD so they can answer questions, give information and things like that? Because one of the big things that we want to try to help Lexington PD on is to build trust between them and the community by getting rid of all the rumors and speculations and all of the other misinformation that's out there, and try to help bring the community together. So I would like to bring that back up as a recommendation, and hopefully we'll get some data from the next two special meetings that we can back up those recommendations with.
Phil, that recommendation is still still in the other report.
Okay.
So I wouldn't.
Oh, you wouldn't put it in. Okay. All right.
I would.
Thank you.
I wouldn't add it.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess that help takes care of my recommendation.
Well,
we'll see what else comes up, throughout the meetings.
Exactly. I mean, depending on what the community liaison said, there may be a different way to recommend something achieving the same goal. We'll see. Kennedy, anything that you've been kicking around? I know the flock was basically already your idea, so I'm not saying there needs to be anything else, but
I do have some things that I'm sort of pondering on at this time, and basically it's coming out of our session with RTIC a few weeks ago. I've asked a question and posed a question within our full commission, and I still just want to continue to reiterate that in terms of being able to provide notes into this live document so that we have access or have a visual to those notes coming out of these informational meetings, because I do think those would be helpful in terms of informing our recommendations going forward. And I do have some notes that I would like to share with the subcommittee and the full commission at large.
Okay. Trying to remember, I know there is a Google Drive, but I can't remember what my status is on that. There's an RJEC Google Drive. Sorry, I'm just looking at this right now. Because certainly, like, if If there are things you want to add, I want you to be able to.
Yeah, right now, I'm in the our RJEC Google Drive right now. There are
Yeah.
2 PDFs and 2 Word documents that Emily Drury put in. I think that we did talk about the fact that we were going to possibly create separate folders for each of the subcommittees. So we can put our information in the specific subcommittees, as well as the main Google Drive is for the full commission stuff.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're talking about. What there, it looks like there's a thing that says subcommittees, but I don't know that there's anything in there, right?
Let's see.
There should be a separate, this in the subcommittee folder, there should be separate folders for each committee. But if you don't
Yeah.
see it, let me know and
So
I will.
yeah, so there is a Legis subcommittee folder. There's just no content in it. I see. Okay.
Oh, I don't see that. Okay.
So if you're in the Kennedy, are you able to see the RJEC shared drive itself? Okay. You know, I'll ping again. It was an email from Chair Fields a little while ago, but I'll just re-forward it to you. And it's got the link on it that says, here's the Google Drive. And then in there, absolutely, as Director Brown says, there is a subcommittee, there's a folder that says subcommittees, and then within subcommittees, there's a Ledger folder. Currently that is empty, but I don't think there's anything. I think the purpose of this would be for exactly what you're discussing, such that if there was something you wanted to upload for the subcommittee, that would be the place to do it. But yeah, that's a good point. There's no reason we can't take advantage of it. And I'm assuming that's why that was what created, and they sent us the link on June 4th. So I think that's a great point, Kennedy.
Eliminates my need to keep up with the hard copies.
Yeah,
Yes.
Right.
Because I unfortunately, I did not bring them with me to the office today.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to mostly be, I think, learning from these next 2 and see if any other recommendations strike me. And obviously, I'd be very curious to hear if Serenity or anyone else on the committee, subcommittee, has anything that they want to add to the recommendations. Director Brown, excuse my ignorance, but before you got on here, we were trying to figure out exactly who is still a member of this subcommittee, because I know that there were maybe people added, maybe not, and on the list. So who are the formal members of this subcommittee at this point beyond the 3 of us? And
Serenity, I believe that is it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, that's good to know. Just sometimes, yeah, there were a couple of people on the invite list, and I wasn't sure if they were on it or not. But we are the chosen 4. Perfect. Okay, well, good. Anything else you guys want to discuss other than excitedly preparing for our August 12th meeting? I will email Director Brown my 2 questions. Commissioner Wells, if you wouldn't mind emailing her your question that you'd have for the community liaison folks. Other than that, any other business you gents had?
No, sir.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else, Director Brown?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. I'll look forward to seeing you guys on the 12th with whoever is the lucky winner of our first special meeting.
Cool.
Appreciate you, sir.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.
Thank y'all. Have a good one.